Yeah. Nathan's not here.
Oh. Oh yeah, no. That's all right. No, my name's Ali Conley. And Ali, I was assuming like which pool of presenters that you have. I know you guys are having multiple people here this month, so. So nice having you with us. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Good morning. Good to see all of you. And the month of March. Yes, we flipped the calendar. This is our second session on the theme of home. And today, as you know, we're going to talk about what is affordable housing? What does that look like? What is affordable housing? And how do we make that happen? We're going to talk about that today. And Hope Church member Terry DeYoung is going to introduce our guests today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Thank you all for being here. In spite of what our president says, affordability is an issue for lots of folks, and affordable housing is an issue, and it's good that we can be here this morning to think about it and to be led by some people who know a lot about affordable housing and helping to make it happen. And leading us this morning is Jacob Horner from Dwelling Place of Grand Rapids, with support from his colleague Ali Conley. Jacob has been working in the affordable housing industry for 20 years, first at Plant Moran, then Great Lakes Capital Fund, now known as Sinair, and then PK Companies. And in 2023, Jacob became Chief Real Estate Development Officer, as you can see by the slides, at Dwelling Place, where he directs real estate development activities, asset management and ownership functions, and the Community Land Trust. Since October of 2024, Jacob has also served on the Dwelling Place leadership team, directing the activities of the organization alongside its 3 other officers. Jacob grew up in West Michigan, lives in Grand Rapids, earned degrees, BA and an MS from Michigan State. He has extensive experience with financial modeling, deal structuring, and negotiation of legal documents. And in his free time, Jacob says he enjoys Michigan's outdoors, travel, art, cooking, bicycling, and reading. So thank you, Jacob, for being here this morning and leading us in this important topic.
Thank you, Terry. That was a very nice introduction. I appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And here today also is Ali Conley. He's our Strategic Partnerships and Fundraising Manager, and so I'll be having him, he'll be speaking a little bit towards the end of the presentation as well. And then we'll also have some questions, time for questions, so if you do have any questions, if you wouldn't mind holding them to the end, that would be appreciated. So, just to get started today, affordable housing, it's kind of a, it can be a bit of a loaded term, and people use it in a lot of different contexts. And so what does it actually mean when we say affordable housing? We'll be getting into that. Hold on, skip the agenda. So part of the agenda is addressing affordable housing, but first we'll talk a little bit about Dwelling Place. You know, this isn't a presentation about Dwelling Place, but I think it's important for you to understand who we are and why we're here. And then we'll talk about affordable housing, and then a community land trust, which is a tool that we use to create and preserve affordable housing for people that want to take advantage of home ownership opportunities. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in Ottawa County specific to affordable housing. I also did want to mention, I know a lot of folks may not be able to stay for the whole presentation, so if you do have a question and you need to leave, that is fine if you pose it during the presentation, but if you can hold it to the end, that's great. So who's Dwelling Place? We've been around since 1980, so we're in our 46th year. We are basically a lot of the local leaders, community leaders, church leaders in Grand Rapids in the early 1980s, they saw the state was shutting down its mental institutions. There was also a lot of development activity happening in Grand Rapids, kind of market rate development activity in the downtown area. And so there was a fear that there was going to be a lot of displacement of folks that lived in those neighborhoods because the rents would go up. And then also, because of the mental health challenges, that there may be an increase in homelessness, people that are unhoused in Grand Rapids. And so a lot of local leaders kind of came together and said, we need to form an organization that is specifically serving our unhoused neighbors. And so, the things that we were founded to prevent are displacement, addressing the threat facing folks because of that new development, and how do we prevent the area from being totally gentrified, respond to deinstitutionalization, so the removal of that, and then also just to strengthen the neighborhood, to catalyze development activity in the neighborhood. And this is kind of how we got started, but our mission has evolved a little bit over time. And so our current mission is at the bottom, and I know it's hard to see, but it's to improve the lives of people by creating quality, affordable housing, providing essential support services, and serving as a catalyst for neighborhood revitalization. So we talked a little bit about quality, affordable housing, essential support services. So we have 9 social workers on staff that provide services for our residents. We have properties, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but permanent supportive housing where folks that are living in those developments specifically have certain challenges. And so we provide services that are specifically designed for helping those folks, improve their daily lives. And so that is a key part of our mission that has kind of grown out of this initial effort in the early 1980s. And then the last part is catalyzing neighborhood revitalization. So what we mean by that is that we're not just building apartments for folks to live in, we're also changing the physical landscape of the community when we're doing this. And so how does the work that we do impact the greater community? We've been very thoughtful at trying to do certain retail in certain neighborhoods. So we have historic buildings that are built right up against the sidewalk, and they have these beautiful storefronts. We don't just want to have those be housing. We want to activate that storefront and have that be viable for commercial businesses. And also, we've kind of built an eclectic neighborhood of retailers in Hartside, where you have a lot of folks with really cool, unique secondhand stores. We have Premier Skateboard, which is a high-end skateboard retailer that a lot of folks come to from a long ways away. We have just some great local businesses that we try to provide a space for them to have a storefront at a bit of a lower cost. And so we see that helping to catalyze neighborhood revitalization by creating that foot traffic and that the vibrancy that storefront creates. So this is just a little bit more about who we are in terms of geography. So as you can see, a lot of our stuff is in Grand Rapids. This is kind of the zoomed in portion of that. A lot of our stuff is in the Hartside neighborhood, which is just south of downtown. But we also do have properties in Muskegon, Hesperia, Granville, Kentwood, and then in Holland, we have 4. And so we'll kind of get into that in a little bit here, but this is just kind of explaining a little bit more in detail what I was covering in terms of the activities that we get involved in. 2 things that weren't mentioned previously. We have a community land trust, which is, again, a way for us to provide homeownership opportunities, and then community building engagement. So one of the big parts of our work that is, when you're doing affordable housing in a community, especially one that doesn't have a lot of affordable housing, people don't understand what that is. It can have a stigma, and people will read a news article and see, oh, this development is being built here, I don't understand it, why is this happening? We try to intentionally get into a community well beforehand, a year or more before we're actually putting a shovel in the ground. And we have information sessions, and we talk to the neighbors, and we talk to people about what we're looking to do, and we also get their input. We may not be able to follow all of the input, but it does inform our work. It helps us understand why this area is important to the community and how this development may impact people's daily lives. Is it going to add traffic? Is it going to add noise? Is it going to change somebody's view? Understanding those things helps us do a better job. And so we try to do the work up front where we come into a community and we understand those items before we get into the process of developing. A lot of times, if you don't do that, you're kind of playing catch up at the end when it's very difficult to make changes. So we see the value in that. And that's something that I think is a competitive advantage of Dwelling Place. It's something we do very well, is we listen to the community before we start our work. Oh, and I do just want to show here too, these are just some by the numbers stuff. So we have 1,400 residents, about 1,100 total apartment homes, and then within our community land trust, we have 47 homes right now. So this is also just kind of another overview of the type of stuff that Dwelling Place does. So, you can see here, this is a historic storefront building in Grand Rapids. We have a lot of that type of stuff. This is a typical home that we would have for our community land trusts. And we're also showing just kind of some of our staff hanging out and enjoying the work that they do. You can kind of see here too, we also have, a lot of our properties have community gardens. And so that we have a community gardening program. We have a gardener on staff that works with the different residents to program those and to plan for, each season, who's going to participate. And a lot of our properties, people are very excited about that, and it really adds to their quality of life. We also do a lot of work with public art. So if you're driving around downtown Grand Rapids and you see a mural, there's a very good chance the Dwelling Place had a hand in that somehow. So we understand the value in having a fabric of a community that includes artists and includes the beautification of public spaces, allows people space to do creative work. We think that helps build a community, and that's something that we've always supported. So just a little bit more about our work in Holland. So as I said, we have 2 apartment buildings that are under construction. One is just right here across the parking lot, and I'll get there in a second. But the other one that we're building right now is at Collin Park. So that one will be 38 units, 38 apartment homes, and then just next to that, we'll also be building 5 townhomes and selling those through our community land trust. So this is all on that road along Collin Park Drive. And this will be a second phase, so we won't get started on this until later this year, but this is under construction right now, as well as the Hope Apartments building. So this is the one that's right at the corner here. We are currently under construction. We're moving right along. We're ahead of schedule a little bit. On this building, on the Collin Park building, we're a little bit behind. But the good news is we got the foundations in and we got the walls poured, which is the riskiest part of construction, is getting out of the ground. So we're very happy that we've been able to do that without significant mishaps, or any mishaps really, but that can just be a black hole if you don't have solid ground to build your building on. So, okay, so enough about Dwelling Place. What is affordable housing? Because it's such a broad term that it can be used for a lot of different things. What kind of the general rule is that housing is not affordable if you're spending more than 30% of your income on it. So really what we mean by that is, if somebody's rent is more than 30% of their income, we consider those folks housing burdened, or that housing is unaffordable to them. They may still be able to technically live there, but they're going to be constrained. There's going to be other things that, they're not going to have as much to save for retirement, or spend on their family, whatever other things they would like to do. That housing cost is so high that it's really putting a burden on them. And so, and that also includes utilities. So, why does that matter? We think it's very important, and a lot of studies have shown that if you provide housing, if somebody has stable housing, so many other outcomes are so much easier to achieve. It's so much easier to have good health outcomes, good educational outcomes, and have people have steady employment when they're housed. If they're not housed, it's very difficult to achieve these things, and it just makes things so much more difficult. If you think about, if you don't have a fixed mailing address, and you gotta have your kids in school, or you gotta have, you need some type of health care, you don't have an address to put on forms. You may not have a government ID that matches an address where you live at. So these are things that make just participating in a lot of the daily activities of life very difficult for folks if they're not housed. So it's we see that as kind of a first step is in helping folks that are down on the luck get their life stable, is having that home, that roof over their heads. When you have to worry about where the roof over your head is coming from, you're not going to have a lot of time to think about your health, your education of you and your family, and am I going to make it to work tomorrow? Housing costs, they've been going up. We all know this, that rents have been going up a lot. Home prices have been going up a lot. And that is outstripping the growth of income. So the increase in folks' wages and pay is not keeping up with how much housing costs have risen. And that's not just rent, that's also price of homes if you're looking to purchase a home. And I'm sure folks are pretty aware of that. Housing access shapes opportunity and long-term wealth. Again, another thing where to build opportunity and long-term wealth, you need good health, education, and workforce outcomes, and so those things kind of just tie together. If you have stable housing, you have a lot more opportunity to create that. And then the last thing I do want to talk about is existing inequities. So historically, there's been a lot of ways that housing has been developed and sold to folks in the U.S. that has resulted in inequitable outcomes. So one instance in particular I can think of is in Detroit. There's been a lot in the 40s and the 50s. There was a practice called redlining, where a lot of folks that were, and it was racial. It was basically folks that were, looked a certain way. They did not have the same opportunities to finance the purchase of homes, and there was a lot of, movement to try to exclude certain folks from being able to access housing. And so we see the tools that we have now as a way to try to correct some of those imbalances and provide access and opportunity for folks that may have been shut out of the system or just haven't been able to access good housing in areas that, like Holland, that have good school districts and good resources, good infrastructure. Having the access to those type of things can really help people build stability in their life. How do we do this work? So obviously if you're renting a building, and it's just market rate, or it's not affordable, it's unrestricted, you have your rents and you have your expenses, and people can make a profit doing that. But if you're doing affordable, if you're limiting your rents to 30% of somebody's income, how do you remain profitable? How do you have that be a venture that makes sense? Well, we do that through various forms of subsidy. And so there's subsidy available mostly at the federal level, but there are also state level resources and a lot of resources that come from the feds that are allocated by the states. And so a lot of these programs, we work with various departments of the federal government. We're heavily regulated on a lot of this stuff, but that's because we're being stewards and being entrusted with public dollars. So we get millions of dollars from the federal government in the form of tax credits and other incentives that we use to build this housing. And so they want to know that we're doing the right thing, that we're maintaining our housing, that we're only renting it to folks that are qualified, that we're keeping our rents, at the levels they need to be, and so on and so forth. And so there's just a lot of different agencies that have been created, and the two main ones that we work with on the housing side are HUD, which is the top logo there, and then USDA Rural Development, which is the one on the bottom. A lot of times people may hear the term Section 8. Section 8 is a rental subsidy program, and there's there's many different types of Section 8, but the two main ones are project-based and tenant-based. So there may be folks on a waiting list that get a tenant-based voucher, which means that they can take that voucher to any landlord that is accepting them and go rent wherever they would like. And then there's project-based Section 8, which means that there's a contract between the government and the owner of that building that they will subsidize the rent for anybody that's living in that building. So the subsidy is tied to the building, not to the person. The reason why both of those are important. So the project-based stuff is very important because that allows us to go and get financing to build the building and have it operate and know that our lender then knows that the folks are going to be paying 30% of their income, and the federal government is going to subsidize the rest because we have this contract. And so that helps us show that this development is going to be viable long-term. And it's really important from us from a development standpoint. The tenant-based voucher is more for folks that, that are on a waiting list and there's limited resources, but when people get up on that list, they have the ability to use that voucher, however they would like. So it's just two different forms of subsidy. The other thing I do just want to say, Section 8 is not necessarily the same as affordable. So Section 8 is an actual subsidy of the rent, but affordable just may mean that we're keeping the rent below a certain level. So the subsidy is somebody pays 30% of their income, and the federal government pays the difference between that and the voucher rent. So it's just a way for folks that are maybe have very low income or a little bit further down on the scale. And slide didn't turn out exactly right, but this is kind of what we call the spectrum or the kind of continuum of people that are at different levels. Because like I said, when you say affordable housing, technically it could be anything that's 80% of area median income or below. So that's very different, and I'm just going to skip ahead here for a second. What is area median income? That's basically, it's set every year where they're taking census data and they're looking at each county or MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area. They're looking at all the demographics and the income levels of all the folks that live there, and they're kind of saying, okay, here's the medium at 100%, here's 80%, 60% of that amount. So right now, if we're talking about 80% of AMI, for a 4-person family, that's somebody that makes $88,000 or less. Now, that family of 4 that makes $88,000 is in a much different situation than a family of 4 that makes $33,000. And so there's different levels for that. So this family may qualify for a lower rent, and that's a good thing, but this family is going to need help with the rent because they don't have enough income to cover all of their costs. And so I know that's kind of obvious, but I'm just trying to demonstrate what is the difference here. So when we talk about something that's subsidized, it's typically folks that are making 30% or less. So they're very low income. It's typically seniors that are just on Social Security or fixed income, and maybe single parents. So you may have somebody that has a couple of different kids, but they don't have a traditional breadwinner, or they just have certain types of government payments. They're typically going to be on this end, and so they're going to need help with getting their rent subsidized. Then you kind of move further along. Kind of once you hit that 50 to 60% of median income, those are folks that are able to afford some rent, but they're not going to be able to afford the market rent. A market rent on a 1-bedroom apartment may be $1,300, $1,400 a month. Those folks, affordable for them might be $700 or $800 a month. So we need to build housing that is subsidized enough where we can get those rent levels down where it's affordable for those folks. So this is typically, when we talk about affordable, we're typically talking about this point and back. We have over here, and this didn't really show up, but this is 80 to 120%. So this would be folks that are kind of in this range here. This is typically who we see as participants for our homeownership programs, our community land trusts, but also this may be folks where they're making good income, but the rents may still be very high for what is available for them. If you're a single individual and you're making $62,000 a year, but the rent on a 1-bedroom is $1,400 a month, that is still quite expensive for that person. And so what we've seen is that, there's definitely a lot of programs, and there's not enough, but there's programs that are serving a lot of folks at kind of at this end of the scale, but there isn't as much that is providing housing for folks at this end of the scale, and we call that the missing middle. So we also are trying to create some opportunities for folks that are kind of there, because we see a lot of those are younger families, maybe young professionals, and folks that you want to have moving into your community to keep your school district going, to have that natural churn, but they're kind of priced out. So they may be out living in a township or an outlying area, but you'd love for them to be living further in the community. They just can't afford to. So they don't need as much subsidy, but they need something, because what's currently available is unaffordable to them. The other thing I did just want to say is just kind of these different terms of art that we use. Workforce housing is a newer term that we typically see for folks in that 80 to 120% range. So if you hear the term workforce housing, they're typically talking about housing that has a little bit of subsidy, but not, it's not Section 8. Okay, so that's a general overview of what affordable housing is. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is our community land trust, which is a relatively new venture for Dwelling Place, but it's something that is a very powerful tool, and will allow us to do home ownership. So as we showed kind of earlier, we have about 1,100 apartment units. Those are all for rent. This is more creating home ownership opportunities. So what is a community land trust? So a community land trust grows out of an effort called shared equity. So shared equity is kind of the idea that instead of a business owner or a for-profit or even a nonprofit kind of owning and controlling the asset is kind of controlled by the community, or at least there's some community input in how that asset gets used. And so what we mean by that, kind of the concept has been around for quite some time. An older version of it, probably the original version of it, is a co-op. So a co-op could be, a bunch of folks kind of banding together, buying a home. They have an agreement with each other about who's going to be doing certain types of maintenance, who's going to be paying for certain things. And it could work very, very well kind of in a micro setting. And I know that that's been done at a larger scale, but it's typically been, kind of a group coming together and doing one or two homes. And like I said, it can work very well, but it's like you have to have a lot of agreement amongst the folks there, and that the stars kind of have to align for that to really work well. And so the community land trust is kind of taking that concept and creating a scalable model. So it's creating a way for you to have community ownership and do a lot of, but also build a lot of housing and operate a lot of housing, so that it's you're not just doing one or two here or there. So the idea is we set up a nonprofit Dwelling Place Community Land Trust. That nonprofit owns the land. So we have a subdivision that we built in Grand Rapids where the Community Land Trust owns the land that's there, and we worked as a developer to build the subdivision. And this is one of our homeowners here, and that's one of the home designs. And essentially, we continue to own the land, and the homeowner owns the home. The trade-off for the homeowner is that we're able to sell them the home below market value. So we set our home prices at 75% of appraised value. In exchange for that, the homeowner, when they go to sell, they share the equity. So what I mean by that is they get any of the equity that they've paid on their mortgage, anything that they paid down, and then they get 25% of the appreciation in value. So the homeowner, is able to share in that value, but most of the value creation kind of gets rolled into the next owner. So what we mean by that is that the idea is that the home is going to be perpetually affordable, where they'll own the home, they'll get some appreciation in value, but then the home price will be discounted for all the future buyers. The reason we're able to do that is we use different forms of subsidy. We use tax increment financing and other partnerships with local governments to help us subsidize that initial construction. But that way, we're kind of building a perpetual inventory of homes that folks can come into and buy. And so we have these homes right now that are priced around $240,000 with the discount, $240,000, $250,000, and the market value is about $310,000. So you can see, it's creating quite a bit of advantage there, but also, the trade-off for it is you're not going to get the full fair market value if you go and sell it. So the other part of it is we have community involvement in the governance of that entity, and so a third of the board members, and we're still kind of getting it set up, but eventually a third of the board members will be folks that own the homes, and they'll participate in the governance of the organization. The other thing, the ground lease, so because we own the land and we're leasing it to the tenant, that also allows us some level of control. So if somebody's operating the home as an Airbnb, or if there's, illegal activity or something going on, we have the opportunity to be able to step in and correct that, or basically be able to ensure that the community remains stable overall, and that basically we're making an investment in the land, in the home, and so we just want to make sure that we have a way to protect that investment and make sure that we can preserve the community for everybody. So this is just getting a little bit more into the detail of, who actually benefits here. So, we have families that are not able to purchase housing. They're gonna benefit from a lower priced home. We protect the communities by having that inventory of starter homes that basically folks that are moving into communities, if the home prices keep going crazy, you're not gonna have that natural churn. You're not gonna have a way for somebody that's 30-ish years old that has 2 kids to move into your community to go to their school district and everything like that. So, having that inventory of homes at a lower price point gives opportunities for folks to come in. The other thing I did just want to talk about is that one of the things I really like about this model is it's really a way for people to protect themselves from a hot rental market and from kind of unforeseen circumstances. If they really want to be in a community, they want to put roots down, they don't want to get displaced, buying a CLT home, as long as you can make your mortgage payment, you're not going to have to worry about the landlord increasing your rent next year. The other thing that we do is, while people that are buying the homes need to be income qualified, if the homeowner were to pass away, they can leave that home to their immediate family without them having to be income qualified. So that kind of helps protect them from unforeseen circumstances. Basically you're not going to be displaced because of either the rental market or because of some unforeseen circumstance. So that's kind of the idea, is that we want people to feel comfortable that I can move my family into this community, we can put roots down because I'm going to own a home and be a member, be an owner in this community. So that also, doesn't just benefit the family, that benefits the overall community because you have more stability and people are able to be neighbors. Covered that. And then, we talked about legacy, so that's, people being able to leave their home to their family members. It kind of creates that long-term stability that we'd all like to see. So this is just kind of, I did cover this a little bit, but basically the CLT owns the land, they lease it to the tenant. The lease is a nominal payment, I think it's $50 a month. So, that's not like a profit-making thing is the leasing of the land, that's a control thing. So that basically gives dwelling place the ability to step in. The other thing we need to protect against is foreclosure. So if somebody does get in trouble and isn't current on their mortgage, we try to work with them to turn that around and provide, we have different resources for financial counseling and helping people work things out. But if it gets to a point where the lender has to foreclose, we have to step in at that point. And that's one of the reasons why it's important the dwelling place is behind an effort like this, because you need an organization that has some level of resources and stability to be able to step in if there's an issue. And so, because if that home gets foreclosed on, we lose the ground lease, we lose the land, and we lose any investment that we've made there. The bank can then just turn around and sell it to anybody for market rate. So that's why it's important for us to have that legal structure and to be able to exercise some control if we need to. Another thing I did just want to point out, community land trusts are relatively new in Michigan. We're seeing a lot of them pop up, and so you can kind of see they're all over the state now. Now, not all of these are actively doing homes. The blue circle, the blue pins are CLTs that have actually built and leased homes. So you can see dwelling place. If you're familiar with ICCF, they're kind of a sister organization of ours, ICCF Community Homes. So those are those two kind of blue pins here in Kent County. And then also Robinson's Landing is a development that was done in Grand Haven. So that's that other blue pin there. So, and then there's been some work done in Detroit and some work up north. So, like I said, still relatively new to Michigan, but this is not a new concept nationally. We're not just kind of making this up. There's been a lot of work with it on the coasts where home prices have been crazy for a long time. And I think Michigan's starting to catch up with the rest of the country in terms of that. But people have seen a lot of impact with these type of programs, especially you look in California, there's a bunch of pins around the Bay Area. So basically we're building off of a lot of work that others have done. Another state I just wanted to mention is Minnesota. Minnesota is kind of light years ahead of Michigan in terms of utilizing these programs, and so it's great because we can use them as a model. They've learned a lot, they've been through a lot of these lessons and can help inform our work. So we do have 50, that didn't really turn out right, but we do have 55 homes total. We've built 47. We have some other ones that we've kind of just rehabbed, and then we have 25 families currently. So we're still selling some of those homes and just completed those last year. So I did want to talk a little bit about how we've been able to work with some other organizations and other community partners to create opportunities in our community land trust. And so this gentleman here, he's Matt Sheminsky, he's one of our project managers, and that's his friend David, who works for the Christian Reformed Church in Grand Rapids. So Resonate Global is a separate entity of the Christian Reformed Church that own 3 duplex properties in Grand Rapids that they have used for people visiting from out of town, people on mission trips, families that maybe needed emergency shelter. They owned them for 25 years and kind of utilized it. They took very good care of them. They're in great shape. But it really wasn't part of their core mission anymore. They didn't really have an active use for them. And so Matt and Dave were talking one day and came up with the idea of, why don't we put these into the community land trust, and that way we can create affordable housing opportunities for folks. Part of the issue that when we do this work, we're selling the home below market value, which is a money-losing proposition. And so if we're just going and building it, we have to have some form of subsidy. Well, here, the church graciously agreed to sell them to us below market value, so that we had to do a little bit of rehab work, but our overall costs are lower than what we're going to sell the homes for. So even though we're selling them below market, because we got that, we were able to get them at an affordable price from the church, that made the whole project work very, very well. And so we wanted to mention this because that is a way that we're looking in the future how to leverage this program is, are there existing homes, are there existing areas that maybe are underutilized or could be utilized differently, or are there philanthropic ways, and I'm sorry the text is very small here, but this is, are there ways for us to kind of reposition some properties or work with community members to take housing and create opportunities like this? So you can see this is just an artist rendering of what a completed duplex will look like. So this is just kind of showing this is kind of a sales pitch a little bit, but it's just talking about the different features that we'll have there. And we're not talking about like little boxes. This is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. It's about 1,600 square feet. They all have their own washer and dryer. They have garages, so these are very nice units, especially once we get them fixed up a little bit. And so yeah, it kind of shows how we can create opportunity for folks by partnering with people that are giving and have housing that is maybe underutilized or don't know where to go with that. So this is also just kind of showing what I think this is the end of it, yeah. So this is kind of showing what our process is with the Community Land Trust. So when we have somebody come in, we work with them to do initial qualification, just see what they would qualify for in a mortgage and everything like that. They're all required. We require a home buyer education course, which basically helps people, especially those that are first-time home buyers, understand what their obligations are on their mortgage and all the different paperwork. Then kind of once they get through that, they have their pre-approval. Then they submit an application, and we actually have them select a home or select, where they're going to live at, and then they work through and close their mortgage. So that's kind of the long and short of that. And I've been kind of doing this work at Dwelling Place. I've been here since 2023, so still relatively new, but it's really exciting to see what we're doing with the Community Land Trust. It's not something that is a money-making venture. It's something that Dwelling Place sees a need in the community and has made an investment, but we think it's work that's very important and very much needed. Every community that we go into, whether it's urban, rural, rich, lakeshore community, inland community, red, blue, whatever you want to call it, everybody recognizes the need for home ownership opportunities. And we'll go to a city council meeting, and I'll be talking to a city council member that has a son or a daughter or a niece or a nephew that is a police officer or a municipal worker or a teacher, and they can't afford to live in their community anymore. And we're not talking about the most expensive community in Michigan. We're talking about relatively small towns where traditionally people have always been able to buy homes that are at those income levels that I showed. So it really just highlights how quickly things have changed in terms of home prices, and we've not caught up on the affordability end. So this work is very important, and there's a lot of work to be done, but it's just an exciting time to be in it because there's so much to do. And the other thing is there's so much attention on this now. We've been talking about how there's been a housing crisis for 20 years, and now we're finally getting politicians and people in the public arena to kind of say, hey, we have a housing affordability problem. Yes, we do. So we appreciate your time and attention today, and I also just want to say your congregation and the community has been so supportive of the work that we are doing, and we greatly appreciate that. This is very hard, difficult work, and it's very complicated, and it doesn't kind of works on its own timeline, and everybody's been so patient and gracious with us, and we're just excited to see it take shape. So I'll pause if there's any questions. I know Terry wanted to say a few words as well.
Yeah, I wanted to just add that during my 3 years on the Human Relations Commission for the City of Holland, I became more aware of some of the affordable housing issues, and actually participated in a 5-week cohort that was led by Dwelling Place about advocacy and affordable housing. And I learned a little bit about CLTs in that workshop, or that cohort, and then I attended a Fair Housing of West Michigan conference in Grand Rapids a couple of years ago, and there was actually a workshop, so an hour-long workshop on CLTs, and I became quite interested in the possibility that Cindy and I could place our home, we live in Holland Heights, we could place our home into a CLT. But I also learned that Holland did not have a CLT. I contacted a number of organizations, social agencies, talked to the folks in Grand Haven about how they set up theirs, spoke with leaders from Habitat for Humanity, Jubilee Ministries, Community Action House, and other places. The City of Holland all spoke in varying varying degrees favorably about what a CLT could do and how it could benefit the community and long-term affordability, but none of them was willing to really get started in setting one up. So Dwelling Place now has set one up. It's still in its early stages, but a few years ago, you can hear more about this on March 22 in the session here in Adult Ed. Cindy and I have been making our home more accessible so we can use it for aging in place. And as a way to maybe increase both affordability and affordability of an accessible home, we're interested in the possibility of placing our home in a CLT. We're not there yet. We still need to learn more about it. But people with disabilities are particularly disadvantaged when it comes to buying a home that will work for them, a home that's accessible and affordable. So we have one, we think, that's getting there, and we're interested in this possibility. And I hope other folks would see the benefit of this as a way to make a concrete contribution or step toward increasing affordability in our community. You can hear more about that on March 22. What questions do you have for Jacob or for Ali and Dwelling Place about affordable housing?
And I do want to just take a moment to introduce Ali. So Ali Conley is our strategic fundraising partnerships and fundraising manager, and he'll be in the community doing a lot of work, and you might see him. He might be a little bit more visible than I would, but I don't know if you want to. Yeah, please.
If I'm doing my job well, you will see.
Okay, we're going to start over here. And so I must ask you to please remember that we are live streaming. We are recording. So for the sake of hospitality, please use the microphone when you are speaking. And as you begin to speak, state your name. First.
David Myers, and thank you, Jacob and Allie, for singing with the angels with what you're doing. We here at Hope Church are really excited to be cooperating with Dwelling Place and having you enable what's happening right here in our block. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about community-wide planning that balances the availability of jobs and housing. The people in your housing need jobs in order to be able to afford the rent. Here in Holland, Lakeshore Advantage is promoting continual economic growth and expansion in business in West Michigan. City of Holland is incentivizing companies to come in with tax breaks and so forth that bring more jobs. So we bring in thousands more workers, growing the community further, but then that overwhelms anything that you're doing to create 52 new affordable housing units here. Is anybody, I mean, you're working on providing housing, other people are working on expanding the economy and jobs, which is overwhelming the affordable housing. Is anybody looking at the macro environment and how to plan an ideal community? And
I don't know that they're looking at it too directly, unfortunately, but I do know that there is coordination between a lot of the different regulators. MISHDA and MEDC, they kind of report to the same folks, and so MISHDA is our state housing agency, MEDC is our state economic development agency, so they do collaborate somewhat. That is one of the things that we have to do as part of our due diligence and as part of our work with our funders is we have to show that there's demand in a community. We have to do a market study to show if we build this housing, will we be able to rent it up? You know, they don't want to subsidize the development of housing in an area that isn't growing. So I think everybody recognizes that this is a very much growing area and there's a lot of economic opportunity. And so when we're competing for resources, this is an area that's going to be more competitive and attract those resources because of that economic development activity. But unfortunately, it's not as smart yet as we're putting in 100 jobs here. We better put in 100 homes. We're not there, and I don't know that we're ever going to be there, but we do recognize at least the areas that need the housing and where the activity is going is where we need to be doing our work. I don't know if there's anything you want to add there.
Yeah, I would just piggyback off of that just to say, from my perspective and the way I approach, my work and how we making sure we have collaborative partners, making sure we have good relationships, making sure that people understand the work that we're doing, is continuing to have individuals like yourselves, Hope Church, Community Action House, Little River Band, the mayor, who support this, and we continue to provide more education, more information, great questions like that, so folks like yourselves can talk about it in the community, raise more awareness, and then if there are opportunities where you might be able to help, whether create a contact, maybe just tell a story, or somebody doesn't have as much information, or could connect them directly with us to be able to have more information and get, whether it's from Jacob and his real estate development team, or our community and building engagement and our AHA, our advocacy programming, or myself, that the more that we keep this information out and we keep those who are directly invested in supporting, such as this entire congregation, and I know individuals that have also supported themselves, that we just need to continue to keep making you all informed and making you more comfortable with the subject matter and the need and the reasoning, so we can keep that momentum going. Because the Collin Park and Hope Project is really, to me, in my opinion, a true beacon of a quality affordable housing. Does not have to be somewhere else. It can be visible. It can be in great parts of your city. And the fact that they're leading that, you all have led that way, can only create more momentum, and in turn, hopefully have more influence on how do we better balance some of those challenges when people have different interests.
I'm Jack Nineheis. My question has to do with education. As you plan your CLTs, do you coordinate with public schools regarding placement so that the children that grow up in these communities will have adequate access to education?
So one of the things we do look for when we're doing new development is what is the quality of the education there? And so that is something that when we're doing our underwriting and our lenders, the folks that are giving us the money to do this work, they want to know that, you know, there's good school districts in those communities. And so that's one of the reasons we love doing this work in Holland, because we recognize that it has a very strong education system, and providing that access will be helpful. In terms of are we directly working with the school district, you know, we're definitely working directly with the city, and so there's a bit of an indirect connection there, but it's not as much as, you know, we don't know who's going to buy the house or live in the house and how many kids they're going to have until they're there. I will say, you know, we do have a lot of folks that once we're kind of built and up and running, we have our resident service coordinators that can help connect folks to services. So if there's somebody that, oh, I have a special needs child that I need to get them into a certain program, those are the type of services that we can provide. And also, we're so blessed to have Community Action House as a partner with us, because they are tied in with so many local resources that, you know, it really needs to be kind of on a one-on-one basis. So you can't really create a one-size-fits-all solution for that until you have it built and you have your folks living there. So that's how we'd handle that.
Hi, my name's Peter Hookman. Thanks for the presentation. I have two questions, I suppose. The first is, it seems subsidized housing has a bit of a bad reputation for disrepair or neglect, so maybe you could just educate me if that's accurate or how you avoid that. And then number two, you briefly alluded to decreased funding, and we're certainly aware of federal funding issues, and how has that impacted you either for prospective projects or maybe even more importantly for your existing projects?
Excellent questions. So I do think, you know, we do have one slide here that kind of we didn't want to talk about it during the main presentation because we didn't know how much time we'd have, and I know we're probably running short, so I'll try to keep it brief. But so we did have a slide here about, you know, the history of public housing, and one of the things that you're kind of alluding to is, you know, you hear the term housing project, it doesn't have the best connotation, because a lot of the housing work that was done in the 50s and the 60s was building, you know, very large complexes in dense urban areas, and it concentrated a lot of poverty. But also, you have what we have now is more of a public-private partnership, where we're a private entity that the government is overseeing, but then also there's private oversight of that as well, where we have an investor that is getting tax credits from what we're doing. They have an incentive to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So currently now we have, you know, both private oversight and public oversight, making sure that we as the developer are doing our job. Public housing has changed quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot of great public housing that has been done in this country, especially recently, but it's just, this is the type of stuff that I think creates a stigma around subsidized housing, because you know, we've all learned lessons from this, and we all do much better work now, I think. So I would definitely say that subsidized housing doesn't necessarily mean something that is poorly run. In fact, having that subsidy gives us stability to go and get financing and know that we're going to have that money coming in from the federal government every month. You do have a lot of folks that are qualifying for those subsidies have a lot of needs. They may be people that are chronically homeless. They may be survivors of domestic violence. They may be people that have a lot of physical or mental handicaps. And so those populations of folks are inherently a little bit more difficult to serve, which is why we have, you know, supportive services in that. But it also just means it's more, operating that housing is more costly and difficult than it would be if you're just renting a market rate apartment. And so I think there's difficulties in a lot of that, especially when you have very complicated regulations. And so not every affordable housing development is going to be successful. And unfortunately, you know, we kind of get, we see some stuff get publicized, it's usually negative, right? So, so we all have to deal with that stigma, but we as operators also have to do a good job. So I would just encourage you, if people have concerns, to kind of look at the history of the organizations that are doing it and what other work have they done. You know, it may not be 100% perfect, their entire track record, but if they're in communities, taking risk, doing work, helping people, you know, are they going to be good stewards of resources? Those are the type of questions that I think are important to ask.
I would just add one quick thing to that as well, is a lot of that comes from the fear of the unknown, right? There's a lot of data, a lot of great data out there that shows that affordable housing does not have a negative impact on market house value in the direct surrounding areas. And there is a matter of otherism, or just a matter of not being exposed or having the experience with individuals that may be in need. And so one of the things that we're going to continue to do, and I'm working with Community Action House, which is why you will see me a lot this spring and summer and into the fall, is bring some of those folks over, right? Not just our residents, but also I had a great conversation yesterday evening with a former boss of mine when I first moved here 4 years ago. She was living right across the street from affordable housing that we were putting in at 28 in Union. Incredibly apprehensive about it. 4 years later, I was talking to her about it last night. She's like, I love them. She's like, they've added an incredible amount of vibrancy to the neighborhood. They're out, they're utilizing it, they're a part of the community. And so I think having those experiences and having that storytelling, and then also, you know, kind of making sure that people are doing their due diligence and having that experience and keeping an open mind of what affordable housing could be, because also I think why it matters is that, especially when you have it in places like we're putting it in Holland, it also creates a vibrant community. Like the work that we do beyond just the work, the incredible and difficult work that they do creating the affordable housing, is that we want our community members and our neighbors and our residents to thrive, which is going to bring that vibrancy to that. So we provide those services and we provide that programming and that backup and that those communication channels so you can build those relationships, right? So everybody can understand what community is and bring that in. And so we want to make sure that we're bringing real live stories as well, which we will be, and I will be, along with other folks from Dwelling Place, to make sure that we continue to tell the dynamic of how this all works, right? Because there's a lot of different components that go into it. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to the conversation, but excellent question, because it is exactly what Jacob was talking about, but also I think it's a matter of, are we exposing ourselves to the folks, or do we know folks, or do we have the lived experience of those who might need that, and how can we share that empathy with others?
Thank you. I really appreciate your being here today, and I thank you, Terry, for helping make this all happen as well. Learned more about affordable housing and what CLTs involve. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
My apologies. Can I have one last quick plug?
Quick plug.
So I've been working very closely with Scott Rumsa and Renee Rivard over at Community Action House. We've been really working diligently the last 6 months to rebuild our relationship and really strengthen and bring our partnerships back forth and more proactive. I'll be working at a Community Action House at least once a month. I started last month, and I'll be going through the summer and into the fall. I will be there next on March 12th. all day. And so if anybody's ever interested in stopping by, having coffee, whether it's there, we can step out in the community, grab lunch. But I want to make sure that everybody knows that we have points of contact. Feel free to reach out to me at any point in time. I may not have all the answers, but I can make sure I have access to the folks and the experts that do. But we just want to make sure that you all and all the other partners and community members that are interested, there is somebody you can directly contact at Dwelling Place in addition to Community Action House, and really hope that we all were able to take advantage of that and spend some more time with you.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jacob. Yes, appreciate that. Yep. I know we have some people in our congregation who looked on the corner lot here and were really excited when they saw all that concrete, that kind of tower, and it was like, that's the elevator. And yep, there was a good excitement about that happening too with our project. Thank you. Thank you very much. I can let you know that next week, Jim Bolkins will be with us. Be very careful, because I see his brother David is here, and I learned just this week when I met with Jim that David is his brother. Indeed, it was a delight to meet with your brother. I will say, Tim and I met with Jim this week in a part of his preparations for next Sunday's presentation. He will be talking about his new book, Faith and Family in a Time of War, the letters of World War II field surgeon Dr. Richard C. Bolkins. Yeah, it was fascinating to meet with your brother and to already start to hear some of the stories. If you've ever received a letter from home, or if you ever went to summer camp and had to write a letter home, you know how important those letters are. And Jim told us a little bit that, and he'll tell you lots of stories next week, but he didn't even know those letters existed until 1994, when his mother brought them out. And it's a fascinating story, a wonderful story. So I hope you look forward to next week's presentation as well. Thank you all very much for coming.